Sometimes I receive messages from people, mainly European fly fishers interested in visiting the Scandinavian mountains. And they write stuff like, where should I go? When? And how do I find the best spots? Important questions. And they can be quite hard to answer in just one sentence. So in order to finally make a proper reply, I've decided to take some help from a person who knows this perhaps better than anyone. It's a pretty long conversation, and it's not for everyone. But to a certain few, I think it might be valuable. Picture me as a guy named Francois or perhaps Pascal. I'm a little curious about going to the Scandinavian mountains fishing, like dry fly fishing, I guess.
Okay, Scandinavian mountains dry fly fishing. Well, that would mean that you have eliminated a big part of the year, right? Obviously. When people ask me what's the length of the season up north, I can sometimes say something like 1st of May to sort of a little bit into October. But that's if you live here, because you can't like go to, Kiruna October 3rd and expect to get great dry fly fishing. That's just not gonna happen, The part of the season where it might be worth your while to travel from wonderful Paris to Kiruna would be something like late June to, say, late August. That's the sort of time frame that I think that's the sort of best part of the season. It's between, say, 23rd of June and 23rd of August, something like that. And then you can have good fishing in front or behind, but that's basically the real dry fly season.
But it is a pretty big area. Like, where should I go? Where about, can I go anywhere along the mountain range?
I guess the answer is yes. You can, and you can find incredibly good fishing all around the mountain chain. And the mountain chain, well, like most mountain chains, I suppose, has two sides also. So you have different sides of the mountain chain with different sort of properties. You have the Norwegian side, which is, of course, towards the Atlantic coast, which is wetter and steeper. And then you have the Swedish side, which is more of a gradual descent and a little bit drier, although in the mountains not terribly dry. So you have different weather at different times, and you have different spring arrives at different times. So it's as you can already tell, it's a quite complicated question, but you shouldn't get discouraged by that. That's just, if you know how to play this mountain chain, you can almost always squeeze something out of a mediocre weather report. Almost.
And how would I go about to do that? Because, you still haven't, when do you suggest I go to the Swedish mountains?
Mid-July, something like that.
Yeah.
Would be the safest time.
Yeah.
Because you would be sure that it's not in flood, and you would be sure that it's not fried out yet. Fried out means that it's been so hot and that the insect hatches, everything has stopped, so it's just like a very dead, that would be. And the flood, I guess everybody understands that. There's so much snow melting, so all the water systems will be just like in the Alps, and of course René knows about this, so.
And it's kind of similar to when I've been to New Zealand, where the rain comes in from the west, and then the west coast is like what I appreciate the most. But it's like it gets flooded, and then you have to find your way around the mountains and sort of find the best weather at the time. And it's a little bit like that here also.
Oh yeah, it's not as extreme, I guess. As I've never been to New Zealand. I'm going soon, but I know that it's like that, and I think it's a pretty similar game. One difference, which you have a huge factor here in northern Scandinavia, is the snowpack, because it varies a lot. Like last year, there was very little snow, and you got a very hot spring. What happens is that the systems basically blow out very fast, and also does the insect hatches. But then you look at a year like 2020, the rivers just never went down. So the snowpack makes a huge difference. And so far, the snowpack looks humongous. So I think it might be that one of those years this year. That's my prediction. You can use it against me next summer.
Going back to the initial question, where should I go? Should I like? Is there any spot that like? Where should I go?
I think you would be wise to start somewhere where you have a good sort of like a hub or something where you can sort of access different kinds of fishing, different kinds of stuff. Where you have that in close proximity. You should probably fly to somewhere like Kiruna, Arjeplog. You could get yourself to somewhere like Saxnäs. Some of these places which have access to a lot of different fishing. Good part in Sweden is that you can always go a little bit east. So I know that René, Pascal and those are also typically a lot into the pike fishing, for example, with fly, which of course is fantastic in sort of Sweden between the mountains and the coast. You have, I guess, a lot, you know more about this than me, but there's a lot of like really good pike fishing with the fly there, I suspect.
In Sweden, you have these valleys along the mountain ridge, and in every valley there's one place that is a little bit of like a hub, the capital of the valley, like Saxnäs or Tärnaby and in those places you can reach a lot of different waters, but then you have the weather also, which can sort of completely erase the whole planning of the trip.
Yeah.
And that's when you go fishing the pike.
That's when you go fishing the pike, and a lot of these places, like northern Norway, is very narrow like this, and these places are pretty close to the border. So sometimes you can just take, if you have a car, you probably should have a rental car. You can do this by rail, but it's better to have a car usually, right? And then you can also go down to the fjords and fish for saltwater fish with a fly rod. Can be a lot of fun on the Norwegian side. So. It gives you these places gives you easy access to a lot of different fishing. I would say that, and they also have like a sports store or some kind of place where they sell flies and like coffee mugs or something. And in those places, there's always a guy who knows everything there about the fishing in the area. And asking that guy, with today's weather, where would you go? You always get like a really good answer. Maybe not that one place which he's going to take with him to his grave, but the stuff you're going to get from those people is just like perfect, really good stuff.
Yeah, and many of the locals are a bit more sort of open.
Because they know that, there's like industrial net fishing going on in the same water system. So
yeah. But like the information you get from them is also super good, because it's like, oh yeah, we netted that lake 2 years ago and we caught a lot of 5 kilo trouts, and and then okay, so if there's a hatch going on there, it's probably gonna be something.
True.
Let's get back to Francois and Pascal. Let's say you book a trip to Kiruna. Then what?
Get a rental, and before you get the rental, do a lot of research online. There's a lot of stuff you can find online, just by googling around a little bit. And that stuff that you find, I'm saying this from personal experience, the stuff that you sort of figure out peeping around online, it's going to be much more of a satisfaction to you to go there to the places you found and sort of discover that they are really good and catching a really nice fish. It's going to feel like, I made this happen. I did this myself. It's going to feel a lot better than, buying it from a guide or something, which is also an important point. There aren't that many guides in existence. There are guides at certain places in the Swedish mountains, like at Miekak, which is a wilderness camp, Joonajok, wilderness camp, and places like Ammarnäs. I guess you could maybe also get a guide.
Yeah,
but there aren't many of them. It's not like a business.
It doesn't feel like it's the same kind of guide vibe as in other places in the world.
No, not at all. Like like I was fishing in the States, and it's like everybody has a guide. It's like you have a fly rod and you have a guide. That's like that's how you fish. Come on, it's not like that at all. It's much more like I guess if you come from, of course, these French guys, they know, of course, they're familiar with the Alps and everything. So if you were to explain it to someone from a really remote place, like we were in South Africa together and Lesotho last year, and they didn't know too much about this. You know, it's not so strange because we didn't know anything about the fishing in South Africa either. No. But if you were to explain it to them, it's more like every fishing trip in these areas is a little bit like an expedition. It sounds very pompous, but it sort of is. You have to bring everything, your tent. You have to be able to sort of not survive. It sounds so dramatic. It's a very pleasant place in summer if you take away the mosquitoes. But you have to know how to handle yourself in a way, because there's nothing there. Zero. No. Yeah.
But I guess the fishing is a little bit like we did in South Africa with Leonard. We went to the Cederberg Mountains, where he sort of had figured out it must be fish in this part, and you go there and explore it.
That was very similar to our style of to the sort of Scandinavian way.
If you just take away the roads and the ability to drive to a place to sleep afterwards, then it would be the same.
Identical. Yeah. You had to camp up there. Of course, there was the leopards and the snakes and everything. It's also slightly different, but okay, yeah. And of course, all the criminals and all that stuff is different. It's the same but different, yes.
Yeah. But then when you figured out a few spots, what is it that Arne usually says?
Oh yeah, Arne's sort of biggest claim to fame is that he phrased this legendary saying, which I guess a lot of people have phrased, but it's you have to be able to decide the time or the place. You can't have both fixed, because then disaster. And what that means is you can usually, if you have a fixed time, you can usually maneuver in the weather. And if you have fixed weather, you can usually figure out the place. But if both are fixed, you're done.
No. And Pascal and Francois, they need to book the trip in advance and fly tickets and everything, you know. So they're gonna be the time is fixed.
Yeah.
They're gonna decide a week to go.
So they have to be flexible with where they go.
Yeah, they need to have alternatives.
Yeah.
And how do you find those alternatives?
The way, first with the Googling and all that, massive research in the area. There's plenty of blogs, there's plenty of stuff you can find. You can look around YouTube, you'll find a lot of stuff. It's a little bit like a puzzle. There's always, also in Sweden, there's a really great system which is called this Fiskecentrum, which are located on these hubs that we talked about. And this Fiskecentrum, they usually have like a proper map with the whole area where you can see stuff, and you can go into the Fiskecentrum and just flat out ask them, how do you think the fishing is now in this area? And you'll get a really good answer. So I guess that's I think you pick a hub and then sort of do a lot of research in that area, which is a large area. And then when you're there, do a lot of sort of talk to people, ask them that you meet. And then you can also, of course, go to one of these camps like Miekak or Tunajok. But that's a different experience, but it's also very, as I understand it, really, really, really nice. Never did it.
Yeah, in some of these valleys, you have also like helicopter people.
Oh yeah.
And with them, I guess you could just like,
we
want to go to a week to a place where there's trout, and they will put you off in a pretty good place. But the problem then is that you miss the sort of the funniest part of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's different for different people, but in our world, the big problem is the grayling.
Yeah.
Because the grayling is like, it's plentiful, and it's if you haven't caught grayling before, it's super fun. It's like,
It's great.
yeah. The only problem it's you know, it's great all the time, and then the greatness sort of
Disappears.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah.
We have to explain that part too, because I get a lot of questions about. I've gotten a lot of questions about that from people living in sort of Central Europe and also America. And it's like, why do you hate the grayling? I don't. I love the grayling. It's just maybe I don't love it, but I do not hate it. It's nice. But the problem up here with the grayling is that invariably when you have grayling in a system, you will get these amounts of grayling that are just off the charts. You will find a pool where there's like, I'm not kidding, 200 grayling in a not so big pool, you know? And then what happens, and they're basically all the same size, because the grayling, it grows up to like maybe 1.5 kilo, and you have some freaks which are bigger, but it's basically like 50 centimeters. That's how far they grow, basically. And there's like 200 of them, they look exactly the same, and every cast you make, you catch a grayling. Which sounds like paradise, but it's also sort of like hell.
Yeah, but in most valleys, the grayling are plentiful. But then you usually reach a place where the grayling can't pass or something, and then you get trout and Arctic char, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you reach the top where it's only Arctic char. When I started going to the mountains, we went, because I was living in Uppsala, and we went to this place called Saxnäs in Kultsjödalen, which is a really great place to start, like, because it's not too much grayling.
No.
I don't really know where the grayling stops there.
It stops, with Stalon and that area, just before Vilhelmina, just after Vilhelmina, if you come driving up towards Saxnäs. I think it stops somewhere in the valley there. I remember asking the legend, Jakob Jonasson, about it, and he was very precise. I don't remember it 100%, but it's somewhere there.
But also now with like warmer temperatures, and at some point there will be a grayling on the wrong side of that place, and then it will be...
This is the stuff that gives me nightmares. It really is. You have the same situation. We haven't talked about the northernmost part of Norway, which is sort of on top of Scandinavia, like this, which is Finnmark. And there's this really, really, really great water system up there, which is like a massive system with all sorts of tributaries, and there's a lot of good fishing there. And the grayling is like 100 meters from over a swamp from getting into that system. And of course, what's going to happen if that happens? It's a massive, massive, massive river system, and it's just going to be packed with grayling in a few years. So, but it's been there for many, many years. So let's hope it continues.
Yeah, and it's like when you're scouting for the rivers, what are you looking for when you go on Google Maps and?
Yeah. That part with Google Maps or any sort of map service, you can also use. You could use Eniro in Sweden. They have really good aerial photos, better than Google Maps. And the same thing with the Finkart in FINN kart in Norway, or Gule Sider, which I guess is the same as Eniro. Really good aerial photos of northern Scandinavia. When you look at those, and you should also look at the map to see the gradient in the terrain, what you're looking for is since there's so many mountains, what you're usually looking for is a river which doesn't have too much of a fall. So you want a river that sort of builds some meanders and also has some pools or smaller lakes. And usually places with where you can see the name Låbal, which is a Sápmi word for lake-like pool in a stream, something like that. That's usually really, really good spots to start, because they have this sort of mix between lake habitat and river habitat, which makes the fish population so much larger than if it's just a river. Because the sort of limiting factor in most of these Arctic high mountain systems is the winter, which lasts for 7-8 months. So the problem is that if it's just a river and nothing else, let's say you think about a hypothetical river, it comes down from a high mountain, hits a mountain plain, and then tops off another mountain. Then you'll have like a very small area of productivity in that river, and also a very short season. But if that same river was running through a couple of luobas, totally different story, because the fish would be feeding the whole winter on crustaceans. So instead of like a small river packed with this big fish, you would have a small river with the occasional monster, which is, of course, what you're looking for when you're looking for a dry fly place.
In Västerbotten, those places where the river is like rushing down from the hills, but then up on the mountains there is like a plateau.
Yeah.
And you have these sandy meandering rivers. They're like some of them can be like super good.
Yeah.
Not a lot of fish, but it's like sight fishing and it's,
Yeah.
it's I would say it's my favorite fishing. But
Yeah.
when I go fishing where you live, we usually go for more like not darker water, but it's like darker bottoms and not a lot of sight fishing and bigger fish and
Yeah. It usually is, and I guess that's down to when I try to find a place where we can go for some days to film. I usually try to go for something out of the ordinary, and places that are out of the ordinary, something beyond what you would find just like from the map.
Yeah.
And try to find these places which have this, like last summer when we were in the Grytis Valley and in the Grytis Lakes. That's a very, very, very special place, and fortunately there are a lot of places like that, but those aren't the places that you find like, okay, that's probably some of the biggest trout you can catch on the dry fly. It's going to be in that hole. It's not that kind of place you would pick out from the map.
No, because there's also, it's not just like the terrain. It's also like, because that system has a lot of pike in it.
Yeah.
And that's hard to tell. Because and the pike there pushes the fish to like grow,
Yeah.
get big, and then start living.
But when you're filming, it's a little bit of a different thing than for Pascal and René going to the mountains just to hang out with their buddies and have fun. That's what we do too. But we're also after getting something on film. And when you're going for something on film, you only need the one fish. That's the film, And so it makes a lot more sense for René and Pascal to go to a place which has a lot of big, nice fish and fun fishing than to go to a hellhole which has one behemoth. So that's what I'm always planning for. Try to find a really extreme place. But those places aren't as much fun, of course not. Such as, if you look at somewhere like Miekak, I haven't been there, but it seems to be where there's a camp and everything. It seems to be incredibly rich with, kilo fish, also monsters, but, a lot of exciting fishing, different habitats, some sight fishing, some, these places that, like the Grytis, for example, it's an acquired taste, and it's sort of a place you would go to make a film, perhaps, but maybe not to sort of kick back and enjoy life.
Very essential part of the game is finding your own place.
Very true.
And that requires, I guess, some experience. Like it's hard to just point out a place and go there and you get lucky. And for my part, at least, I've spent most of my life failing to find places. When I was 16, like me and my brother, we found a place on the map and we were like, oh, and then we had read a little bit about the Arjeplog mayfly, and it's like, oh, okay, they say it's gonna hatch then, and we went there right when we had read it was supposed to be there, and it's like, no, it's nothing. And all the time you're getting a little piece of the puzzle together, and then it's like you finally reach sort of a point where you can look out the window or like see the weather prediction. It's like, no, it's not. We're not going this week.
Yeah.
But then, in the beginning, you're always like, yeah, but we're gonna find a spot. But now you sort of. It's also sad to be less naive.
It is, but
Yeah.
it's nothing you can't choose to be. It's not like you can just knock yourself in the head with a rock and become naive again. It's very sad. It's true about most things in life, unfortunately. It's also with the music, playing music. I wish I could have. Sometimes I can actually get that state, but it still get into that state, that naive state, where it's just like, what? But a lot of the time, it's like, I've seen it before, And but with the fishing, that's always also getting back to these extreme places. I guess that's part of the attraction also to these sort of extreme places. That and you know this better than most, because when you were like in your late teens, you managed to sort of find and film on a lot of these like very dreamy sort of places that you described, and of course, being a curious human being, you wonder, isn't there there must be some next level to this? Yeah, there must be something behind. Yeah, exactly. And that sort of drives you into these extremes, like, for example, the Grytis Lakes and that sort of place.
Yeah. And that's also like when you're a fisherman in Sweden, then when you start to get into it and you don't know anything, you start to read the fishing magazines and then in the Swedish sort of fishing culture. And then after a while, you realize there is a shadow culture. It's like the true dry fly culture. And most people in that culture, they don't care about posting things on Instagram or making films or writing articles. It's like in the shadow world where I feel like I've finally reached the bottom of the shadow world.
It takes you many years just to know the names of some of the people in the shadow pyramid.
Yeah, like I don't in the top of the pyramid in the shadow world, I don't know their name. I know like there's the sausage maker and there's like
He's up there.
yeah. And there's like all the dark lords there. But those hub places or what, how you call them, like some of those places you might like stumble upon a shadow lord.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, I'm in the right place, baby.
But and then they like disappear.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Into smoke, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's as complicated as you want to make it. If you want to go fishing in the Scandinavian mountains and have a blast and just enjoy the incredible sense of freedom that you get in the Scandinavian mountains, because you can roam anywhere you like, you can do anything you like, you can fish anywhere you like. It's a fantastic feeling. If you want to have good fishing in that area, it's not difficult at all, and you'll find it. No worries.
Yeah.
Just but there are levels to everything.
But I guess like when you go fishing, you should if you go for a week, and you like the smart thing, I guess, it would be to like see in the beginning of the week. Okay, there we have 3 good days. Like that's the good part of the week, and you spend those days up in the mountains. Perhaps if you want to try lake fishing, that's sort of the hardest to get. But if there's a day without wind and sunny, you can go up fish Arctic char. And then the bad days you could spend fishing grayling or something. It's like
Or big trout in the valley.
Yeah.
Or streamer or pike or whatever.
yeah.
That's very true what you said there, because if you have like a week's slot, with you have maybe the first 24 hours are shit, and then you get 3 nice days, and then more shit. Then it's hard to really picture how bad the weather is in the mountains compared to in the valley. Because up in the mountains, in the sort of, as you said, the Arctic char, the headwaters to the headwaters, where you have the biggest Arctic char, those places are very, very rough if you have like a gale force coming in from the Atlantic. It's a very, very nasty place to be. There's nothing you can do except stay in the tent and drink whiskey. Maybe fish with a worm or something. You could catch something. It's hopeless. So those days you should stay in the valley, because many, especially the Swedish valleys, they're very sheltered. the mountain valleys, like for example around Ammarnäs, going a little bit down towards east. It's very, very sheltered and protected from the weather, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, Ammarnäs is a good place also.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Sorsele, nice, very nice. We were talking about just getting into that sort of thing about the explosion of life. You were asking, is it fair to say that the further north you go, the more compressed the hatches are? And I think the answer is definitely yes. Summers are shorter, so the time window is shorter, and the sort of winter lingers and lingers, and then boom, and it's like a
Yeah, because you can have, like, in the southern parts of Sweden, you have these streams that are sort of English. Like, we went to Björkån this spring, like last spring, and but then you have the summer is coming, and then it's like, okay, soon the Donica will start to hatch. But in my head, it's like, oh, it's sunny, it's warm, it's gonna happen. But maybe it's not happening. But if you go like further north, if you're there when the first heat wave arrives and like all the melting is done and the river is starting to drop, then you're certain there will be mayhem.
That's mayhem every time. Yeah. And the mayhem is it's so intense because everything explodes. The bugs, obviously, which get the fish going, but also the bird life, and with the 24-hour daylight, the sun just rotates, and this feeling is very hard to beat. I haven't traveled all over the world, but a lot of it, and it's a pretty magical place to be. In that time of year, it's a really, really magical, because it's just like every nature program has that sort of.
Yeah, and it feels like your brain adapts to it also, where it's like you don't really need to sleep.
Yeah.
It's like the complete opposite of the dark winter, where it's like you walk around almost sleepy all day. And that said, it's also very hard to time that.
Extremely
first.
hard.
When you live up there, you could time it, but it's like.
This happens, depending on the spring. I agree completely. This happens depending on the spring. It happens late June or early July, flexing maybe 2 weeks back and forth. And getting that first explosion. Well, I live here, and that's literally all I do in that time of year. It's try to pinpoint that. And still I hit it 1 out of 3 times, because, you have a life, and even if you don't have a life, you still won't hit it. So every time. So that's just how it is, And I remember we were very close. You remember that we were driving going to up far north, and we just missed it with something like 12 hours. That was pretty crazy. We were driving, and we passed this one river, and there were like pillars, like literally pillars of mayflies and caddies, like total over the river. It was just like totally crazy, and we could see the wall of shit coming from the northwest. So it's just like, we just missed it. And then, of course, I talked to the guys. Maybe it was Diaz. I can't remember. Yeah, it was Diaz, yeah. He had just hit it. Yeah. And I got like 24 hours of total mayhem, So, yeah, it's a very marginal sport, trying to go for that. That's why you should postpone it a little bit, the trip. It would be wiser to get it a little bit later, so everything is like Lars Nilsen, the legendary Norwegian fly fisherman, says, det må nesten være I gang. Det ikke noe vits, det må være I gang, da kan du dra. It has to have started. You have to establish the fact that there are caddies and mayflies on the water, and that the fish is eating from the surface. That's the best time to go. Not too late, not too early.
Yeah.
He knows his stuff, Lars Nilsen.
Yeah. I mean, and he's right, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like the most magical feeling is, of course, to be there. Like the first day you come, and it's like it's a little too cold in the water. You feel it's like it's not happening, and then it's like during the week, it's just.
Yeah. That's what you want, and that's a high risk project. But it's something even even me and you who live sort of very close in northern Scandinavia, sometimes the weather gives you so much of a beating in your fixed period that it's like, okay, we're checkmate here in the mountains. What do we do? Let's go down to the fjords. I know a place where it's very nice and we can catch some cold fish and cod and maybe go out with a boat. I don't know, or fish some seal and brown trout on the coast or whatever. There is a lot of fishing which is really, really nice. This is of course the dry fly question, but the dry fly question is a difficult question because the dry fly fishing in high mountain areas well north of the Arctic Circle, it's a very, very marginal sport. That's sort of what we should have started with.
But that said, it's like if you hit the right time and the right place.
It's not
It's
difficult.
easy.
Very easy.
Yeah.
If you, let's say, visit the mountains with your family and want to catch fish, it's stupid to go to Arctic Char Lake.
Yeah, it's stupid. You won't catch anything and everybody will just get pissed off from all the mosquitoes and everything. It's not going to be fun. It's a very hardcore mission for people who are like really, really interested in that, I guess. But of course, René and Pascal, they are, you know, and so is Francois. So that's what they're up. They sign up for this. So
One style of fishing I haven't done so much is the Arctic Char Lakes. Can you tell me about that?
Even, yeah.
that's even more marginal because you're so high elevation and what you're looking for is a place where you can sight fish because that's going to be incredibly exciting because you have this huge, very colorful fish and they will come into the shallows to feed, to cruise around. And you get this sort of heart-stopping excitement as you try to make them take the fly. And a lot of the time they don't, and you mess it up, and you spook them, and so on, blah, blah, blah. Very exciting fishing. And then shop is closed. And then it may be closed for the rest of the week, you know, just from the weather coming in. You get a lot of wind, you can't see anything, game over. And you can then go walk around the same place and blind fish for 3 days with a nymph or a streamer. Believe me, I've tried. And nothing. It just turns off. And I guess that has to do with the Arctic char's unique biology. It's so well adapted to, that's my theory, but also has some roots in, I guess, established biology, that it's such an Arctic species that it sort of turns on and off in a very distinct way, even more than the brown trout does. So when you get like a low pressure coming in, it doesn't make sense for that fish. It's adapted to turn itself off in those periods. So then my father-in-law, he's fished a lot with, nets in these huge lakes. And he says that when the weather is from the northwest, you won't even catch in the nets. You have to have good weather for the fish to move at all. Because they're basically just hibernating whenever there's low pressure. And then high pressure comes in and it's a feeding frenzy. So the Arctic char is even more adapted to this environment than the brown trout is, and that's what makes it even more of a marginal sport.
But how would you go about to figure out if there is gammarus in the lakes?
I would look at, first and foremost, I would look at the geological maps a little bit. Geological maps you can find of any country in the world, and what you're looking for at the you just have to take like the broad overview. You don't have to go into the specific lake or anything. What you're looking for is an area which is like blue in color, light blue, maybe sometimes green, maybe sometimes over to yellow, and no pinks, no purples. What you're looking for is the geology. You want limestone or marble. And stuff like that, because that dissolves and gives the water a high pH. And when the water has a high pH, slightly alkalic or neutral, then the gammarus shrimps will, there will be gammarus shrimps all over the place. And that, the gammarus shrimp...
Is this fisherman facts, or is this like, do you feel
Oh, it's real facts, because there's a like a limit, because as you know the gammarus is like a small shrimp, so it has like a outer skeleton which is made of chalk, right? and it cannot build that outer skeleton under a certain pH.
Yeah.
So it's something like that. Don't. I'm not a biologist, but there's something like that. It doesn't exist under a certain pH. So, for example, here in the area where I live, Narvik, you have some areas which are really acidic, and those because of the rock, which is granite, and the granite is quite acidic. So the lakes that you have in that acidic area, there won't be any gammarus, and the fish can grow quite large, and you can have nice mayfly hatches and all sorts of stuff, but they will have, sometimes they have red meat, sometimes they have white meat. They won't grow really, really fast and all that. And then you have other areas around here where you have alkalic rocks, and that will give gammarus population, and that will feed these fish through the winter. That's just I think that's the science of it, on a very fisherman's science of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you think Francois is like starting to get a sense of what to do?
I think at least they're getting sort of a look into the sort of process and how it is as complicated as you want to make it. You can do what I talked about, getting into geological maps and all that sort of stuff, but you don't have to. All you have to do is go to the Fiskecentrum, Kulturdalen, and ask, where should I go today? And you will find really good fishing. So,
And if you have the money, you could just ask the shopper people,
Where should I go?
take
Do you
me
have a place
take me
for
to a good place. You could,
Yeah.
I guess you could even say like, I saw Håvard was flying with you the other year. Can I go to the same place?
yes.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because they want to sell trips, but it's like
It's a
that's
business.
also- yeah, but also
Within the Swedish fishing community and within the Dark Lord community also,
Yeah.
it's like places pop up,
Yeah.
and people go there, and then 5 years later, no one goes there anymore.
Yeah, I remember the Norwegian legend Lars Lent told me about this place, which is well-known place, but it totally blew up after they did like this TV show with also the Norwegian legend Bård Tufte Johansen. They had this show called Bård and Lars på fisketur, and then they were supposed to go somewhere on Kola Peninsula to fish, and something happened. I can't remember, the shit weather or something. So the trip was cancelled. Instead, Lars took them to his sort of favorite river in northern Norway. And they went there and filmed. I think the fishing was okay. I don't know if it was super good. That's not the point. The point is that it was totally invaded, that place, for many years. Or not many years, 5 years, as you said. And then everybody had been there. And then 5 years later, I talked to some young guys. They were then really young, coming up, and they said that they had been there now, and there was not like a living soul there. It was totally incredible fishing again, and no people. So it's this sort of, it's almost like fashion trends.
Humans follow other humans, right?
Yeah.
And
We all do.
but then, and the thing is, you could just point out a place on the map. If you have a little skill, you probably know, okay, this is probably gonna be good. But since the summer is so limited and everyone's time is so limited, you don't dare to go to a place without any intel.
Yeah.
So that is also possible, and you will probably succeed if you just pick a place on the map.
I did that experiment once with Lars Nilsson,
yeah.
just for kicks. I showed him a map of an area that I know really, really well. And I asked him, where are the best places on this map? And he just pointed like, there, 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 there. Totally spot on.
Yeah.
All the best spots, just like straight away. So there's a skill to it also that you sort of get, I guess, by trial and error for many years. That when you look at somewhere on the map and you say, that might be good, but it might also be too shallow. Stuff like that. It's like, yeah.
The most popular places are the easiest to find.
Yeah.
And they usually, if they have been popular for a long time, they're still good places. But
Real good.
it's like you don't get the same kind of buzz going there.
No.
No.
You have somewhere like when we were at some years ago when we were at the lower beep and
Yeah.
and
That's not almost not even
the beep anymore.
necessary
No,
to
no,
beep.
no. I totally agree. But it's just the principle, just to I remember I was once there. It was even worse than we were there, and it was like people were just walking around, and everywhere you bumped into other fishermen, and they were all just like, "This is just ridiculous." You know, everyone was just laughing, and okay, let's just have a beer or something. Do you want a beer? Sure. Yeah.
But it's also like you know what you're walking into when you go to those places. It's and then you can't be too bummed about meeting people. It's like, but when you point out a place you don't know anything about on the map, and then you'll be like, oh, this is gonna be so good this summer. And then if you get there, and it's crowded, that doesn't happen.
I don't.
No.
It's like,
That's true. That is true. And there's, I guess this is an interesting topic, and it's hard to wrap your mind around what actually is going on here. It's some kind of deeply human thing going on that makes this, because when you fly an airplane of, say, from Alta to Oslo or something, then you fly over the whole mountain chain looking down on both sides, and you see the incredible amount of lakes and water systems just under you, and it's hard to sort of imagine that why are all the people there and not there or there or there or there or there or there or there, you know. So it's some kind of deeply human phenomenon going on also.
But I mean, you also know where you get your intel from. It's like if you, for example, that other little creek that the guys called Carpe Diem made a film about.
Yeah.
It's like if you go there after a film that gets popular, like you can't be bummed out that it's tents along the river.
No, and it's like if you manage to figure out the places where we have been, which you can, for example, in our films, you can figure it out. People do, and you can also be pretty sure that you're not the only one who figured it out, because people are, give or take, about the same intelligence. So people can figure out the same stuff.
yeah.
If you are able to figure it out, so are all the others.
Yeah.
No, but then there's also like you have the places where you go and fish where it's like where I'm like, but this is in the middle of the tourist place, and it's like and it's like right in front of everybody's eyes, and nobody sees it.
Yeah, that is true. Very true. Also, you should never underestimate, and that's a tip for the French guys. You should never underestimate the stuff close to the road. It can sometimes be really, really good. It can sometimes be, especially if you just go. Say you're up in, for example, Arjeplog area or Kultje or Tärnaby or somewhere like that, Kiruna, somewhere. And you see on the map that there's a river, it's just like 500 meters from the road, and you can't see it from the road. I mean, a lot of those places, if you break your leg on a place like that, nobody will ever find you. But then you take a helicopter for 20 minutes into the deep into the bush, and there's lots of people. So it's really paradoxical sometimes.
Because there's like a big crowd that don't want to walk too long.
Yeah.
And then there's like the crowd that really wants to walk far.
Yeah.
But those people that's like, I'm gonna walk 40 minutes.
Yeah.
That's I think those places are golden.
Yeah, they are.
But then there's also like rock scissors papers where it's like, you think people think one thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And then it's like you said, it's like pretty much the same intelligence.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like so hard to know how the other guys are thinking.
It's a difficult game, and at the end of the day, totally unnecessary game because there's so much good fishing to be had. So if you're a little bit creative and you ask around, there's a lot of good stuff.
And is there anything else we should say? Like the lowlands of Sweden, like the forest area, the taiga, it's there's of course good fishing there. It's just that it's there is a lot of perch and pike, and it's like it's less. The fish there don't so it's not like they so distinctively eat only insects. So you need a proper hatch, like a vulgata hatch, or to find the fish. But it's we're not gonna talk about that because Pascal he wants.
He wasn't interested.
No,
in fact.
he
That
wants.
wasn't his question.
No, exactly. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I really hope this
Ends all the questions.
yeah no I still hope it's the whole message thing. It's like you get so you get honored by getting the question,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and then you look at it and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna make a proper reply to this later, but then you start to think, oh, what should I say? And it's like it's so hard to compress this game into a sentence where it's like go to Kiruna and wish for good weather. But it's like, yeah, and get to know some locals, and get to know the right locals, and don't trust every fisherman, but you have to figure out the shadow pyramid. And you have to reach as high as you can, and you get. It's like my relationship with you. It's like you're in the shadow pyramids, and I sort of, okay, I think this is my strongest connection to the upper part of the pyramid, and I have to stick with it.
But then,
Yeah, it's a complicated and wonderful game.
yeah,
You
it
could
is.
say.
And it's hard enough.
Even if you master it, you could stick with it the whole life. You won't.
succeed.
You won't succeed. It's like even the people that sort of, I quit my job, now I'm only gonna be fishing for 2 years.
Yeah.
Still not able to achieve it.
No.
I think it's very similar. My friend Petri Lukainen, he said something. It's very similar to surfing, because he's also been surfing, not like windsurfing, but proper surfing with a board. And he's not like he's been surfing for some years, in California and stuff, and says it's very, very similar. You never get it.